Hey guys, what's going on? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Welcome to day 10 of my 365-day graphic novel review challenge. I know I said yesterday that I wasn't going to be doing any more John Ostrander stuff, but then I forgot about this other John Ostrander thing that I have. Legends. This is a collection of the 6-issue event miniseries from DC Comics from 86 or 87. This is an older printing. You can kind of see in my copy that the pages are kind of starting to yellow a little bit. I think DC has done at least 2 other printings of this story since this printing, and I'm pretty sure they're doing a fairly new one just recently. This is one of those stories that has gone through several printings, and I don't think DC is ever going to let it just completely go out of print. So if you're interested in this, you don't have to get the copy that's like 20 years old. You can get a newer version of this story. This is written by John Ostrander and drawn by John Byrne. And apparently John Byrne hated this miniseries. He hated working on it. He said that it was just a big, huge mess, that it was nothing but editorial interference on the creators working on a story. He said that he would be working on the art for an issue, and then either the editors or the writer would tell him, hey, we had to change this part of the story, you're going to have to redraw part of it. He said that it wasn't even completely written while he was working on the art. And he apparently just hated the process of working on this. You can't tell that he hated it by looking at the pages here. John Byrne's art, as always, is phenomenal. I've always loved John Byrne as an artist, and his work here is still top-notch, very stellar. He handles the Fourth World characters, Jack Kirby's Fourth World. He handles them very nicely. At times, I would almost think that it's Jack Kirby drawing some of these characters. Desad, there's one point in this book where it looks like it's Jack Kirby's Desad and not John Byrne's Desad, and I thought that was very good the way he was handling those characters. But just about all the characters here, John Byrne handles them very well. I really like the story here that he is drawing. As for the rest of it, this story is kind of a big deal because this was the first event miniseries that DC was doing since Crisis on Infinite Earths. And so Crisis was kind of just something to wipe the slate away, and it itself wasn't so much a story, it was more just setting up the DC Universe. This is kind of continuing setting up the DC Universe. It's establishing that this is a universe. We've had a year or two to kind of set up all of these characters. By this point, you've already had things like Frank Miller's Year One with Batman. You've started having George Perez and Lin Wein's Wonder Woman. They've started developing her as a new character, or as an old character who is now new, if that makes any sense. John Byrne's Man of Steel has been going on for a little while. So all of these creators have been establishing these characters or re-establishing these characters. So by now, these characters individually have been set up in their own series. So this was one of the first stories since Crisis on Infinite Earths to establish that this is a universe. And it does that in a couple of different ways. Number one, it sets up a new Justice League book, Justice League International by Keith Giffen and J.M. DeMatteis and Kevin Maguire. That's the Bwahaha Justice League that you've probably heard of, the one with Blue Beetle and Booster Gold. This miniseries sets that team up because before that, you had the team with Vibe and Steel and Gypsy and Vixen, my least favorite Justice League. They were still active when Legends started, and then that team gets eliminated somehow. I don't really remember right off the top of my head because there's a lot that's going on in this book. But then after this, you got a new Justice League that gets set up. This book sets up the new Suicide Squad, also by John Ostrander, and they are set up here. And from what it says, it seems like there was a previous Suicide Squad, and I seem to vaguely recall that there was a Task Force X in the 60s at DC Comics, but I am not in any way familiar with that. But this sets up the one that everyone is familiar with Amanda Waller and Rick Flag and Deadshot and Captain Boomerang. All those guys, they're here, and Suicide Squad, they first appear in this. This also sets a precedent for pretty much every DC Comics story since 1986 or 1987. This permanently brings Jack Kirby's Fourth World characters into the DC Universe. Now, let me go ahead and paraphrase, or let me go ahead and amend what I was saying. Jack Kirby, when he first created the Fourth World stuff, it appeared in the Jimmy Olsen comic. Darkseid, I think, first appeared in the Jimmy Olsen comic. So the Fourth World characters were always technically set in the DC Universe. You occasionally had run-ins with the Newsboy Legion or other characters who are kind of tangentially connected to the DC Universe, but by and large, when Jack Kirby was doing his Fourth World stuff in the 1970s, it wasn't fully part of the DC Universe. It was in the DC Universe, but it was also its own thing. This is really the first time that I can think of where somebody who is not Jack Kirby is handling the Fourth World characters, and it's also the first time I can think of where the Fourth World characters are really interacting with other members of the DC Universe. You get to see Darkseid interact with Superman. You get to see him interact with Captain Marvel. This is what I meant by this book is really establishing the DC Universe as a universe. It's not just saying, okay, Captain Marvel is in the DC Universe, but he's kind of off doing his own thing. These guys are all part of the same world, and they're all interacting. And if that's something that you like to see in your big event minis, this is something I would definitely recommend checking out. I kind of get burnt out on big event miniseries and big event crossovers and stuff like that because these days they happen every 3 minutes, so they don't feel as special when they happen so often. But I definitely enjoyed this book. It feels very big. It feels special, partly because of all those reasons that I listed. And I do get kind of burnt out on the Fourth World characters showing up all the time in the DC Universe. It feels like you cannot pick up a DC comic these days without one of the Fourth World characters showing up in that book. And I kind of get sick and tired of that. I kind of get sick and tired of other people who are not Jack Kirby using the Fourth World characters. Sometimes I'm okay with it. In this case, I'm okay with it. When they show up in the DC Animated Universe, I'm okay with it. But by and large, I kind of get sick and tired of Jack Kirby's Fourth World characters showing up written or drawn by someone who's not Jack Kirby. For some reason, I'm okay with it when it's characters like Kamandi or Omak or Etrigan. But Fourth World characters, for some reason, I just don't like seeing them be used by someone else. But in this case, in this story, I didn't mind. So overall, I really liked Legends. I thought that it was the best thing that it could possibly be. Yes, it was editorially driven, but I feel like Ostrander and Byrne, they did the best job that they could do in making this be a cohesive story that doesn't require that you go and read all 200 of the tie-in issues, because there were a ton of tie-in issues for this, but you don't have to go and read like the Batman issues that tie in with Legends. You can read this 6-issue miniseries and you don't have to go and read those other things, and I think that is a benefit for this story. So those are my thoughts on Legends. I hope that you guys liked this video, and I hope that you guys will check out whatever I'm going to be talking about tomorrow. Again, I know I said that I'm done with John Ostrander, but I do have one more John Ostrander book to talk about tomorrow, and it will be the last one I will be talking about for a very while. So in the meantime, you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the future. Have a good one.